There are a ton of ways to become a bona fide super being within the Marvel Universe. You could be bitten by a radioactive bug, get splashed with some kind of goo, get enhanced via a government program, make a deal with a moon god, or, as is the case with most of the subjects of this video, you could study hard and learn to wield arcane forces as a sorcerer. And there have been a surprising number of heroes and villains who have gone the magical route. So many, in fact, that when I was looking at the list of them, I figured it would be helpful to go through and pull out a small handful of the most powerful and rank them by their power level. Which is exactly what this video is all about. From mutants who learn magic to survive as a child, to Asgardian demi-gods, to the Sorcerer Supreme himself, this is my ranking of the most powerful spellslingers in Marvel. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. How could I not include someone on the list whose name is literally Magik, even if it is spelled with a K and she isn't the most powerful spellcaster? Illyana Rasputin had a difficult childhood, to say the least. While other kids were dealing with homework and fighting with their siblings over who gets to play the Super Nintendo when they get home from school, she was instead trying to survive within the hellish limbo dimension. However, during her time in this dark place, she was quote-unquote raised by a demon named Belasco, who trained her how to utilize demon magic. The most well-known of these hellish spells is the one that conjures her soul sword, a blade crafted out of a portion of her own soul, which is just about the most metal thing that I've ever heard. After spending some time serving as a member of the New Mutants, followed by the X-Men proper, Illyana went on to become an apprentice of Doctor Strange, who helped her to better understand her power and control the dark energies that she wields. As a younger, less experienced spellcaster, she naturally is not the strongest at it, but she has a ton of potential, and that alone is enough for her to earn a spot on this list. Plus, her demon form, which she takes on when she becomes infused with too much dark energy, is just badass looking. Had to include her just to show that off at the very least. Listen, when you are a magically conjured child of one of the most famous magic users in the Marvel Universe and an android, of course you're gonna make it onto a list like this. Billy Kaplan, aka Wiccan, is, as I pointed out, one of two children of Scarlet Witch and Vision, along with his brother Speed. At a young age, Wiccan's electrokinetic powers manifested during a fight with a bully, leading to him discovering not only that he was a super-powered being, but also that he is extremely dangerous, as he wound up killing the kid that he was fighting with on accident. But that didn't deter him from using his powers for herodom, as Billy went on to join several teams, including the Young Avengers, where he ultimately met his long-lost twin brother. Now, Wiccan's powers extend beyond his electricity-based ones, as he seemingly inherited his mother's natural talent for mystic arts. Now, despite being so young and relatively inexperienced, he has a fairly firm grasp over spellslinging. In time, he could easily become one of the most powerful magic users in existence. So much so that Doctor Strange has in the past floated the idea of Wiccan eventually taking over the role of Sorcerer Supreme. But for now, he's still just a rookie, so I'm going to be putting him at this spot on the list. Created a few years before Doctor Strange stepped onto the scene and completely stole his thunder, Dr. Druid filled in the role as Marvel's magic casting physician, and he did a decent job at it, at least for a time. However, once the vastly more popular Doctor took over, Druid quickly fell into relative obscurity, only really popping up for the occasional event here and there, which honestly wound up doing more harm to his already shattered reputation than it really did any good. However, this did wind up leading to an event that fundamentally changed how the world saw Dr. Druid, both in-universe and out. During the 1995 miniseries, aptly named Druid, Dr. Druid began to slowly lose his sense of humanity, having been consumed by frustration over his failure as a sorcerer and as an Avenger. Determined to prove himself the world's greatest sorcerer, a rather tall order if you ask me, he slowly began unraveling as he went to increasing lengths to gain power and achieve his goal, even if it meant destroying the world in the process. Now, while Dr. Druid was never really able to quite reach the heights of his other, more famous Doctor compatriot, Dr. Druid still deserves a spot on this list. if for no other reason than his powers at one point threatened the very stability of the universe itself, which is nothing to sneeze at. Plus, it is kind of fun to think about a world where Dr. Druid was the more famous Marvel character than Doctor Strange. Maybe, somewhere out there in the multiverse, there is a version of events where he became Sorcerer Supreme instead. But of course, Dr. Druid wasn't the only Marvel magic user that came before Strange, yet wound up having to live in his shadow. Carl Mordo was a student of the Ancient One before Doctor Strange began his mystical studies under the Old Mentor. However, Mordo wasn't exactly the best student, as he secretly sought to eliminate the Ancient One to try to claim the title of Sorcerer Supreme for himself. That being said, as expected, Mordo wound up not being successful in his plans, as Strange learned what he intended to do and thwarted him, leading to Mordo being exiled and Strange stepping up as the Ancient One's #1 student. Now, Mordo basically possesses the same fundamental level of magical talent as his more successful counterpart, being trained in the use of many forms of the mystical arts. However, one place that Mordo is especially capable is in the use of black magic, often utilizing dark or corrupting spells that Strange himself is either incapable of doing or just straight up refuses to use. He is easily one of Strange's most powerful foes, having taken him on and even bested him on numerous occasions. Now, the MCU has a bit of a different take on Mordo. Instead of being a power-hungry bad guy from the get-go, this version of him is instead a former friend of Strange's, who, in this case, seeks to destroy all magic users as he sees them as a threat to the very fabric of reality. And I, for one, cannot wait to see him make trouble for the good doctor on the big screen, in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, there are a ton of Asgardian spellcasters, as to be expected of a society based upon Nordic myths and legends. And if I were to include each of them individually, then the majority of this list would probably just be made up of them. So instead, I'm going to group them all together into this one entry, and talk about a few who really stand out. Of course, there is Loki. There's not much I really feel like I have to say about Loki, as at this point we all know his deal because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the fact that it's put quite a bit of emphasis on this trickster god, including giving him his own solo show, which did a pretty good job of exploring his magical capabilities, through not just what the main Loki did, but also through the enchantments of his love interest and gender-swapped counterpart, Sylvie. Speaking of enchantments, there is also the aptly named Enchantress. And no, I'm not talking about the DC one. This Enchantress is Amora, an Asgardian woman who has spent the better part of half a century on the page serving as a foil for not just Thor, but also the Avengers as a whole. Instead of using her magic in more direct ways, Enchantress has mostly used her powers over the years to enchant opponents and others into doing her bidding, allowing her to spend most of her time in the background, quietly pulling the strings. She might not necessarily be the most outwardly powerful magic user, but her particular brand of magical manipulation makes her a huge threat. And that is just scratching the surface of all the numerous spellcasters who call Asgard home. As you can see, there are a lot of them. Alright. I'm gonna try my best to get through this entry without referencing Agatha all along. No matter how much that song is a bop, I will not bring it up. Scout's honor. Agatha Harkness is one of the oldest spellcasters around, having been on Earth for so long that she can remember a time before the sinking of Atlantis. And in that long life, she has managed to learn a ton about the use of magic, making her a massive threat to anyone that stands in her way. And she has utilized this knowledge a lot, using it to not only survive through countless major events in history, such as the Salem witch trials, but also to form a safe haven for all magic users and magical beings, known as New Salem, a city hidden away from the prying eyes of outsiders by existing within a sort of pocket dimension removed from reality. That alone should illustrate to you that she is a force to be reckoned with, which is to be expected of someone who has managed to stand toe-to-toe with the devil himself on numerous occasions. So when someone asks you who is the most powerful traditional witch amongst all of the characters in Marvel, you can look them in the eye and tell them straight up that it's been Agatha all along. Wait. Crap. Jericho Drum was a Haitian man who spent the better part of his younger years studying in the United States. After becoming an accredited psychologist, Drum returned to Haiti and began studying under the mystic Papa Jumbo. Guided by the spirit gods of Voodoo called the Loa, Drum very quickly mastered the associated magics. And amongst the Loa who has guided him over the years is the spirit of his late brother, with whom Drum can actually merge to increase his strength or project into others to control their actions. It's some pretty cool stuff, honestly. However, at least some of this might feel a tad bit offensive and dated, as Voodoo's power set kinda leans pretty heavily on stereotypes of Haitian culture, which is a bummer, but you know, he was created in a different time. Nowadays, more modern appearances of the character have been a lot more culturally sensitive, and on top of that, the character has always been treated with a modicum of respect, even being one of a small handful of people who Strange has considered as a possible replacement for himself in the role of Sorcerer Supreme, should he ever have to vacate that role for whatever reason. Now, before I get too far into these last 3 entries, I wanted to just preface this by pointing out that honestly, the order of these final entries could very easily be swapped around in pretty much any combination. Put them in whatever order you want and you really wouldn't be wrong. I simply wound up putting them in the order that I felt fit best. And if you disagree, you're not any more or less wrong than I am. Cool? Cool. Alright, taking our 3rd spot here is Dr. Doom. Doom is fairly unique among Marvel spellcasters, as he has managed to interweave magic and technology, allowing him to stand against some of the most powerful beings in the entire Marvel universe. Initially, Victor Von Doom started his study of the mystical arts under the tutelage of Tibetan monks, but it wasn't until he spent time learning from the ancient sorceress of Arthurian legend, Morgan Le Fay, that he was able to truly live up to his potential. Couple all of that with his genius level intellect, nearly endless financial resources, and boundless ambition, and you've got a character who has rightly earned his reputation as one of the best villains of all time. And he is a powerful enough spellslinger that Doctor Strange once said that if he ever stepped down as Sorcerer Supreme, Doom would qualify as a solid replacement in the role. If it wasn't for the fact that the guy is, totally evil. That should tell you pretty much all that you need to know about Doom. As one of the most stalwart protectors of Earth and its inhabitants, the role of the Sorcerer Supreme requires a powerful magic user to take the mantle and stand against all who would threaten to annihilate life. And of all the sorcerers who have served in this fashion, none have been quite as strong as Dr. Stephen Strange. And Strange has managed to achieve this by being a massive nerd, basically. See, Strange is incredibly good at learning, being able to read and retain information on a much higher level than your ordinary person. This has allowed him to get to the point where not only are there basically no spells that he's not aware of, but he has even been able to create his own by mixing and matching effects of multiple spells at once. To put it simply, Strange is one of the most powerful magic users in existence. I feel like that kind of goes without saying. However, there is one that I would argue is actually a little bit stronger than him, and I think you all know who I'm talking about. Okay, Scarlet Witch isn't the most talented spellslinger in the world. Honestly, when you take a look at her magic ability alone, I'm not even sure if she would make her way onto this list at all. However, Wanda possesses something that pretty much no other Marvel mage has, except for her son. That being her innate ability to manipulate reality itself. Her reality warping abilities are next level. They've allowed her to do some pretty crazy stuff. The kind of stuff that even gods have struggled to do, such as the creation and eventual destruction of an entire separate reality with the House of M dimension, which itself led to another earth-shattering change when her powers allowed her to effectively wipe the vast majority of mutants from existence, basically by just uttering a single phrase. You know the one. Add in her experience with the Book of the Dead, the Darkhold, along with its author, the Ancient One Chthon, which definitely left its mark on her powers, and suddenly you can start to understand why this otherwise mid-tier sorceress has been able to stand toe-to-toe with the other members on this list. Plus, come on, she's been trained by some of the best magic users out there, including several on this list. So of course she was going to pick up something along the way. Hey there everybody, I'm John Alditz and I made this video. Now I want to know what you think. How would you rank Marvel's Magic users? Would you include any that I didn't? Let me know in the comments down below or go ahead and shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more great videos just like this in the future.